with those. So welcome everyone. This is Dr. Alana James, and today's topic is how to love your graduate work this year, or for many years if you are just starting. It's the last of a series of 3 independent but related topics. And so I will refer today to things that have come before if you want to look back into greater depth into some of those subtopics, if you will. I'm going to start with some quotes from Deepak Chopra, which I will tie in at the end, I hope, and if I don't, please remind me, about the power of our mind for success. So Dr. Chopra would say that our minds are a powerful ally, serving our success by inspiring us and bringing us insights. The good news is that our brain physiology is structured to renew itself. So if we have ideas or thoughts that are stopping us from loving our work, the good news is we can retrain that physiology, create new pathways and behaviors. Most of us don't use our minds for many reasons. We might not feel as smart as others. We might place our minds on automatic pilot from time to time. We might employ mental energies just on routine habits. We don't exercise enough. Raise your hand if you're in the room and some of those sound like maybe something you've got into in the past. They certainly are true of me. I think they're true of life, and I think we drift in and out of those things. Today's topic is how to use our minds so we don't. And Dr. Chopra would say that one way to do that is to give our minds better material to work with, hence these webinars, and also to stop and say no to repetitive thinking. So I started today with asking people in the room, what is it? Why do we want to, what makes us feel like we love our work? What is, it was sort of a bold title on my side. So I wanted to know what brought people here. And Leslie said loving her work is to feel a connection to it, to feel inspired by it, even during down moments. Erica says that it's about learning. If I find her interest waning, she tries to spruce it up by learning new things and expanding her knowledge. And Annaline says that loving her work means it's something she cannot wait to do and enjoy. And I hope those 3, I'm sure it's a continuum for all of us, but that's what drives us. That's what keeps us going in the times that we are moving forward, and it gets hard because really big steps forward when we take risks always get hard. It's part of the journey. And in a previous webinar, and one that if you were to write Margie at drlnet.com, she would send you the link to, I discussed how we're pulled forward by our new ideas and our new knowledge, much like we have a rubber band around the back of us pulling us forward. But at the same time, we have another rubber band around us pulling us backward. And those are our habits, our previous thoughts, the way we have always gotten things done. And when it gets hard is right in the middle, when the 2 forces, if you would, are in equilibrium and you feel like you're going forward, backwards. You have to keep the forward movements going to break past that inertia, and then it gets easier again. And in the doctoral world, especially, just so a caveat here is that how doctorates are done around the world and across different programs differs. But in the United States, there's a big push to get a proposal done. That's the first 3 chapters, and that's vetted much like the Viva or defense is vetted by a committee of people. In the rest of the world, typically it's one push. So you don't have that dual push issue. But nevertheless, when you find that the tension between going forward and pulling backwards, it's about the time you have data and you have data analysis. That's when, poof, you take off again. So our goals for today are to give you or have evoke in you new ideas about how to approach your graduate work and concrete strategies to help you implement these ideas in your life. At the end, you can vote with us to see how we did. And Erica comments that for her, repetitive thinking is the killer. It leads to depression and anxiety. That's that negative repetitive thinking that I can't do this. It's da-da-da-da-da. We have those gremlins in our mind, and we really have to tell ourselves to just stop. But it's a common human experience. Who knows where those gremlins got their hold on us? But they can be gotten past. And meditation, as Erica says, is useful to millions of people around the world, and I certainly concur. Okay, so we're going to differentiate our goal, philosophical goal of loving our work, and then the practical goal of loving our work. There's actually a couple of parts of that, and high points of postgraduate life. We will revisit the Covey matrix that we looked at last week about where and how we keep our focus, just to ground ourselves in that, because it's very important. And then we're going to go through 3 or 4 Covey-esque ideas. He would call them beginning with the end in mind. These are strategies, moving from individual to interdependent strengths, determining whether or not our decisions at each point are dynamic or static, because ultimately what we do is a decision. And then centeredness and how that affects getting our needs met without trapping ourselves. So ultimately, our lives are a synergy, win-win between ourselves and others. And then we continue that into a lifelong process. He calls it sharpening the saw. Educators typically call it lifelong learning. So that's the path as I've laid it out for us. Let's see how it goes. Okay, first, practical, philosophical, and practical again. Practically, some of these things have already come up, but when you look at research into what causes zest in people, so that we come under that loving our work heading, it is learning new things for lots of us. Certainly those of us that tend to go to education, it is something. Building relationships, because at the end of our days, how we are connected with our thoughts and with others is very important. We also love something when we're preparing to do something new with it. We like, human beings are wired to like the next and the new. So we may be going into education because we're entering a new field, or because we want to learn to do research, or because we're preparing for an academic career, although hopefully that's not your only reason, because we know that there are about 10% chance of that happening in today's marketplace in most parts of the world, not in all for sure. But hopefully you're preparing for an academic or non-academic career, advancing or preparing, as I said, for non-academic career. So you know what your goal was that started you on your doctoral or master's journey. And so you're going to have high points that come out of that. And one of those high points is going to be often the first couple of classes when wow, there's a lot of new ideas. Then you come across some really difficult times when new skills are required of you. You may have been a long time since you used those skills, or you're not quite sure exactly what they mean. You begin to not have the thrill of good flow, but rather too much insecurity comes into place. That's something where we frequently see people coming to us because they need help to get past that. And that's perfectly appropriate, is to look for outside resources that bring in new ideas, that help keep those tracks back in order, and that keeps the momentum going forward. Then once you have data, it is exciting to analyze that data for most people. It can be really frustrating, and you can be up against another place where you want to have some outside help, but it's your data. It's something you set up. And so there's that ownership and desire for personal growth that comes into play again. And then some of you may be very close to finished, and we see that there's a mixture there of excitement and then almost a disbelief. And I see many, many people fall into the trap that Erica mentioned, close to finishing, where their gremlin thoughts make it hard for them to get to work because they think to themselves, can I really do this? I have many people I've coached who almost try to talk me out of me telling them they'll be graduated in a year, because I've seen it happen. I know though you do this and you do this and you keep doing it, but something inside of themselves is just scared that they won't get it done. Erica says that she underestimated collegial relationships. And a lot of people do. And it depends on how your collegial relationships were prior to graduate school. But in graduate school, you can look at them as your network, as your professional network. And wherever and whenever in our careers we learn that our professional network can be golden for us, it will. And there's a man's research, see if I can pull up his name, Grossfetter might be his last name, and he talked about weak ties. But what's interesting here is that he was looking into networks and when they became important. And his particular research was revolving around getting a new job, certainly an aspect of our lives that we want help in. And what he found was that second-degree relationships in a network, so someone that wasn't your family or best friends, someone you knew in a collegial way, were much more likely to help you get the next job than those that were closer to you. Hence the underlying research behind LinkedIn. So that's the practical side. Now, the philosophical side. This is the who are we in our life journey side of things. Raise your hand, please, those of you in the room, and welcome to the people who came in as I was getting started. Raise your hand if you feel like you are a different person than you were when you started, that this process has done something. Very different. Very different, yes. Can you type a bit and tell us how would you quantify that difference? While they're typing, some things that those of you watching by recording may agree or disagree with is your goals may have changed. Your ideas about how your career works or how your life works may have changed. You may feel stronger. You may feel more secure. You may have a different perspective on your current job, and you may be self-aware. But people in the room may also have a few other things that they're going to bring into us. Look at information in a much more critical fashion. That makes me smile because right after I graduated, my family said, would you get off of the question of what's the data behind that? Because you do begin to hear especially things in the media with a critical point of view of what are they quoting? Where's the data behind this? So we do become, and the whole concept of what is critical thinking and how do we look at things is another reason that people who have advanced degrees have skills in the way we use our mind that we didn't have before. And that's the reason that we have potential for leadership positions in non-academic environments. Erica says she thinks she's grown as a person and realizes that she has something to contribute. It's also taught humility. I'm not always the cleverest in the room. Yeah, I have come to believe that I'm never the dumbest, I'm never the smartest, and that's just fine. I'm not the fastest and I'm not the slowest. So let's look at the Covey matrix and how that helps us here. Covey's perspective, just as a quick synopsis, is that we have different kinds of when we look at the tasks of our lives and the decisions that we make about what we are going to do, we can separate them into urgent or non-urgent and important or non-important. And everything he goes with and says about being an effective businessman, teacher, husband, academic, all of it is that the more time we spend in important but not urgent, the better off we are, the more effective we are. And that's a little counterproductive or counterintuitive to the way we might have been trained, which is take care of the critical activities. And he would tell us that things that seem critical and urgent may not be all that critical and urgent. And that what is really more critical and urgent is that we keep our eyes on the goals that we are after. And so I refer you back to last week when we spent more time on that. But it's very important when it comes to loving things, because if we want to feel a connection, those connections are based upon our capabilities and making improvements. Those connections are built on relationships, on recognizing new opportunities. Really, everything here you can see are allow us to feel connected. And when we are connected to our work in that way, it inspires us. For instance, I'll give you a personal story. I build this business, and the business every day is fascinating to me. And I do a lot of writing and I do a lot of things that are interesting to me. But when I feel inspired by the business is when I have spent time remembering and focusing on the connections that, even though I don't have them directly with students so much anymore, what we do has those connections. And what we do has connections with the deans at the universities who purchase. When I'm focused on connection, everything else flows better. And you may find that true as well. And there's some conversation in the room about learning to accept ourselves for who we are. And there is a whole part and parcel to everything when I do well-being kinds of conversations. And it was last year, it was on the transferable skills, and it'll be on the transferable skills again this year from a different viewpoint. We always see that self-awareness, which is also called metacognition in academic terms, is an underlying skill. We can't have too much of it because it keeps us centered, and then things get better. Okay? So then when we're focused on loving our work, we need to begin with the end in mind. So this is a play-off of an exercise that I commented on before, and that it's good for us to do. Think about people in your field that you really admire. And think about the qualities that those people have. Now, which of those qualities are your strengths or weaknesses? And how can you build on the strengths and develop those things that you don't naturally have. That is the essence of beginning with the end in mind. Now, a lot of people come into graduate work because of a connection to the job they want or the something, and it's a bit fuzzy. And then they go through this kind of big roller coaster process of lots of new ideas and learning to research. And somewhere in that process, they lose the close connection to the qualities or driving factors that they were after. So this exercise is geared to help those of you who might have lost a little bit of that get it back. I hope it's useful. Now, they can do the same thing for career goals. It's a bit more mental. It's a bit more practical based. So you may have gone into getting your graduate degree because you wanted a certain kind of job, and you were going to be more likely to be shortlisted for that job in your job environment if you had an advanced degree. Good for you. Decent reason to go for a job. You may even be in a job and have your employer send you to get an advanced degree because they wanted you to be able to increase your proficiencies within their organization. So then beginning with the end in mind means having a close eye on the transferable skills you're going to need at the end of this job. And remind yourselves that graduate work was not designed in today's business environment. And so the transferable skills that come from graduate work may not be quite such a one-to-one correspondence. And we have we're developing a box set on transferable skills. We have done a series of webinars last year, and I will wrap them into new research this year because I think it's a very keen thing for all of us to be responsible on. But once again, so good time to begin with the end in mind and go back to these ideas. And I've given you a link. By the way, the handouts are up in the handout room if you're attending the webinar. And there's a link at the bottom that is an excellent news article about 10 skills you'll need by 2020 and beyond, based on some new research. And that's what we'll be doing with transferable skills this year. So then, that's one set of ideas. How do you love the work? Well, you begin with the end in mind. You keep your focus on the end. Second practical thing is to move from the individual to the interdependent. Okay, so Covey came up with 3 habits that were building the individual. And then he moved on to 3 habits that make us independent or interdependent. One of them is doing things that is win-win. Another thing is to seek to be understood before you, or to seek to understand the other before you try to be understood. And we've covered those in briefly and in the past couple of sessions. And I really can't strongly recommend enough that you pick up the 7 Habits of Highly Successful People or Effective People, because it's really good work. But I think in general, there is a desire for us to build ourselves. That's natural self-actualization. But the world we are now creating really demands a greater level of interdependence. It used to be we had interdependence on a familial level given to us. So I live in Ireland. It's a very interdependent place. We have a strong web amongst us. The rest of you may also live in a part of the world where that is true, but it is not true now in all parts of the world. And so we need to build our skills in being interdependent. And when we do that in a school environment, it helps us build our network, helps us build our long-term skills, but it also makes us more fun. And we have more fun with others. So second practical tool is for you to think to yourself, how can I build more interdependence with those in my classes? Do I have conversations with them? Do I develop them? And I'll just ask the people in the room to talk for a minute on what have you done that helps you have a good time with your professors or your friends. I know we have a couple people here who are good friends from their classwork. How do you reach out? How do you make those connections? So we'll give a moment for that, and the people who are watching by recording can think about that. And if you aren't doing it, you might question to yourself why you're not, or does it come from one of those gremlin voices? Like Erica saying that sometimes we need humility and to remember we're not the cleverest in the room. Monthly WebEx check-in with your cohort to help inspire each other and address questions. Excellent. So setting up regular times. I have old friends when I used to live in the United States. In order to keep that interdependence going, we set regular appointments and we just check in with each other. Very useful. Thank you for that, Leslie. So next question becomes dynamic or static decisions. What are they? I'll talk for a minute and then I'll come back to this slide. So dynamic decision is made right now from this now moment, from this moment who you are right now. A static decision is one that is built upon decisions you have made all your life or for a while. You do it without thinking maybe quite so consciously or without bringing your current awareness into it. Why are they important? Well, if you're thinking about how you're proceeding with your life, they're very important because it's the static decisions that tend to slow us down and help us not love what we're doing so much. So if we're going to be a lifelong learner, then we want to respond rather than react. And response means we're thinking dynamically. Reacting means we're thinking statically. So here's a scale of 1 to 5 question for you. How much does the context of your life, the way you were raised, the opinions of your family and friends influence you? I'll ask the people in the room to give us a 1 to 5 scale, where 1 is that you react 75% or more of the time from those paradigms that you were brought up with. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. I'm not to say that those paradigms are bad. I'm just to say they don't create dynamic decisions. Now, 5, on the other hand, is that you consciously react almost the other way. Or you're making always new decisions. And that downside, each thing has a positive and each thing has an unintended consequence. And the unintended consequence of a 5 in dynamic decisions is that every decision you have to think about a lot. So 2, 3, and 4 are probably the more responsive rather than reactive way of being. And how would you rate yourselves? And Erica says that thoughts and actions used to depend on a horrid degree on what other people thought. Oh, that is something everyone has to grow out of. If you can be a 3, bravo. That's a good mix of I'm conscious, I know who I am. But I think that the important thing is that we understand what we're doing. So sometimes I'm going to be a 2 because my 2 is based upon a long-term principle or value. And I'm going to be even a little towards the stubborn side of reacting not that way. It's okay to be conservative. Sometimes I'm going to be a 4 because I'm in a dynamic environment and I need to push myself a little bit to think dynamically. So I'm not saying that there's a good or bad here, but I am saying that what you say about this definitely, and how you feel about these. If you naturally like being a 4 and you find yourself in graduate school being a 2, then you might be not as happy in graduate school. See what I'm saying? So it's a good way of checking in with yourself and then making decisions if this is where you want to be. So 2, 3, and 4, we're all on the right track, and we need to know where our and why our decisions are. I'm happier. Also, Erica says she's happier to level 4. I am too. That does not always lead me to make safe decisions, and this is about decisions. So if I can scale myself back from a 4 and look more carefully on a regular basis at my principles and values, my decisions are also more likely to guide me upon a path. 4 can be a little haphazard. Centeredness. Now, we talked about this before, but it's another one of these concepts you'll want to think about. Where you are centered comes out of what matters to you in life. And I've used the conversation last week about a student who I know who was very centered on her family and her raising her child. Great, but really impacted her graduate work, because every time anything happened with him, her first and foremost was not to miss a football game, not to always be there for him. And I'm not saying that was bad, but I'm saying you have to know where you are centered, and then you have to make decisions based upon these choices. So you want to get your needs met, and you don't want to be trapped. So she has felt trapped over time because she didn't get as much graduate work done, and in fact the financial side of that added up, and it became a trap, a financial trap, a rather serious financial trap. So the more conscious we can be on this, how do we rate ourselves, and what can we do to keep us in that center zone? And then as we're evolving, who can we bring into it? If you're really centered on making sure, I'll use her example, really centered on making sure that her son has a great life and it really feels looked after, but she needs to get some graduate work done. So who else can be godparent to her child to help that looked after feeling while she got some work done? I'm making that up, but we all have outside resources that we don't think of enough, or we don't call upon enough. And then we go back to the how centered are we with other people. So, and welcome, Allie. Glad you could join us. Finally, we're coming to this, or getting close to the end, coming to this feeling about synergy. Oh, Leslie says she taught herself to be more of a 4 and then was a clear 2, wanted to please people. So there's a pendulum swing. We are evolving characters. This purpose of this loving conversation is really just to raise ideas so that we can self-reflect a bit and decide what's best for us so that we love the work we're doing. Because in fairness, this is an important investment in ourselves and in our future. And wouldn't it be all the more wonderful if we loved it as we went along? One way to get there is through synergy and win-win. And this is Covey really strongly saying, remember to understand before being understood. It takes a big slowing down and then saying, what am I not, if there's a tension, what am I not understanding here? What would that other person tell me? How can I come to that other person without judgment, just asking questions? And then a win-win is, how can I assume that this other person and I want to work together to make this good thing happen? So using the topic of making decisions about how we spend our time, being able to go to other people that we want to invite into helping us with things. We might want to go in talking about what we need, but first let's understand where they are and then see if together we can get the children have more time with the right family members. We can get the study time set aside and yet the dinner gets made. Whatever the real tensions are with our lives. Now, I'm just putting in an aside that goes to the transferable skills. There's win-win expands our sphere of influence. The more we can understand before we seek to be understood, the more likely what we say and the connections we feel are solid and heartfelt, and the more likely our sphere of influence grows. And then there's this, dynamic growth pattern that happens where we can ask for more people come, more things show up, and that is the essence of leadership. And I think a major transferable skill that we should take from graduate school is how to increase our spheres of influence through our networks and how to be leaders in the fields that we are studying. So where can your ideas make a difference? I'm just asking this today. And how can you grow to be more comfortable every day with speaking up? So that takes me into the question of positive self-talk, which we started at the beginning with the Deepak Chopra quotes, where he said, our brains are wired to change. So if our mind says, I need to, oops, that was negative self-talk, I don't want that, I'm going to ask instead, how can I get this done? I don't know if I'm going to be successful here, but what would it take for me to up the odds so I would be successful? What help do I need? I've learned other things in the past, how I know I'm a learner. So even though I'm frustrated at this moment with my graduate school work, how can I take what are the lessons from my previous being successful that I can apply here? These are all the positive self-talk things. So let me run to the room again and ask you all, what's your favorite positive self-talk? What do you say to yourselves when you catch yourself and you want to say, no, I really can't do this? Kind of a fun conversation before we come to the end. Be in the moment and relax. I like to say breathing is good. Take a breath. Yes. What else do you do? Sometimes I take myself outside. I look at nature and I take that moment. I'm lucky enough to work out of my home. And so I take the dogs for a walk, Erica. Erica just said that. Yep, take the dogs for a walk. Clear the head. Be with the four-legged companions. Do any of you have phrases that work for you? I might just say, oh, stop. Just stop. You've got this. Yes. You've done it before. You can do this again. Okay, I will, Erica, I will catch you on that. She says she'll send me a picture of her hounds. We should have who is it? I think is it Google? No, it's Amazon. Has pictures of their dogs. When you get a 404 on Amazon and somebody's dog is telling you it's a 404, they tell you who the dog is. So yes, our four-leggeds, our nature, taking a breath, remembering what's good in our lives, It's a different way of looking at the principles and values that are important to us. And once again, these are tools to help us grow our self-awareness, and that's the center circle. So the more self-aware we are, the greater that circle grows. And then when we focus on others and connection to others, the greater our circle of influence grows. It's a very important diagram to keep in mind. We're not just us. The interdependent part of loving our work is that we are us and the people. So I get energy because you all come to the webinars. And even though there might be 100 people who will look at this webinar by recording, those of you in the room were the ones who gave me the energy back. And for that, I'm very grateful. Sharpening the saw. So now then we come to the end of the road where we look at practical exercises that help us keep it going. This has been a threesome, if you would, about how do we improve our skills at ourselves, at managing ourselves and our lives. These are habits that do great things for us over time. And one of the ones I've come up with this year that is really working for me that I'll share. And then if you have others that you want to add to the room, please do. I found this habit tracker. And it's great for me. I don't travel. So I have three major habits. Mine are to increase connection between people, to be creative, and to do something that helps the university world understand the value in technology tools to help their students. So those are my three habits, and I don't do them like it's day one of the month did I do them. I just, on a day when I had a yes on one of those habits, I just fill in the box. And I don't care, in a sense, it doesn't matter how long it takes me to fill in all the boxes. It keeps my mind on the fact that I did these things. So that's a tool that works for me. Others of you, raise your hand if you have a tool that works for you that you want to share. No hands going up. So we'll move on. If those of you who are watching by recording have a tool that works for you, please do share it in the discussion space on the Big Marker Room, which is getting more and more use. So before I close down, I just, with this part of the conversation, and then those in the room always have a chance after I close off the recording to talk about what's going on in your lives in a more private way or with your research to ask questions. But before I do that, let me just tell you some things. If you haven't signed on to your control panel as whatever portal of ours that you're a member of, you can now sign up for the webinars directly from your portal. So that would be either main.drlnet.com if you're an individual member, or your university letters, whatever they are, .drlnet.com. Sign in. There's all the webinars coming up, and you don't have to scroll through the big marker things. You can just click on them easily and sign up. It's a good idea. Some of our webinars are overbooking right now. If you do find yourself not able to see a recording because it was overbooked, or because you didn't book ahead of time, you can write Margie at drlnet.com. And within the week, we are putting up the webinars in a private space as videos, and we'll send you the links for those. We do have some new tools. There's a box set on academic writing. It's under the resources link on your menus, or under the new sections where it says box sets, you can scroll through. You can click in, sign up for it. It'll be sent to you. You can also click in under opt-ins to the Friday emails. They're starting this in February, and there will be an email every Friday that's focused on academic writing tools for those of you that like to keep your focus there. And we're seeing more discussions all the time in the Big Marker discussion area on Twitter and Facebook. But I really like the Big Marker discussion area because it allows people to go back and forth. So if you see things there, please comment. It encourages other people. The percentage of lurkers to active is always 90% lurking, 10% actually there. So those of you who are brave enough to actually be there, you do great things for the whole community. And that's it for today. Thank you all who were in the room. Hang out, stay, tell me more about what's going on. And Annaline says you like the new control panel, more comprehensive. It is getting better all the time. That's what a technology company is like. It never stops. I used to think I could build something and it would be done like a book. Not in this world. My best to everyone who's watching now or by recording. May you love your master's or doctoral work, whatever year you find this video in. We so appreciate you and what you're doing.